Well, wonderful contributions and very much on time, so it's perfect. So I want to start the discussion just with a very simple question. So you have the leadership of the STM industry here. What would you like to ask them to kind of accelerate in the area of diversity and inclusion? And I know, Jess, you have a more academic perspective, but that might even be even more interesting.
So I definitely think within peer review, we could do a better job of getting younger scientists involved with peer review, because at the moment, peer review goes to really senior people. Is it on? It's on, right? Yeah. So it goes to senior people in professor positions because they're recognized as being the best scientists. But actually, early career researchers have more time. They're really keen to do peer review. They're not fatigued by it yet. And they're generally much, much more diverse. And I think universities can play a role in training people to do better peer review. It could definitely come into that aspect of your PhD training. But all of the young scientists I speak to get so excited when they get the opportunity to review for journals. And I think they'd really make that step, that peer review step, much, much more diverse and also much more equal for everyone involved. So that's my one idea.
Perfect. Thank you. Simone.
I would ask that we start with raising awareness of what the issues are. I think we're all inadvertently complicit in maintaining the status quo. And until we are aware of what other people experience, then we don't really stand the best chance of trying to solve the problem. One thing that came through quite strongly in the Workplace Equity Project survey is that we tend to be less sensitive to the experience of other people, so that if you're male, you're less likely to see, you're more likely to believe that everyone of every gender has the same opportunity to be promoted, and it goes all the way down the line. So trying to become aware of our own implicit biases and actually admitting that we have them, because we all have them, admitting that we have them and having the confidence to shift gears once we realize we're making decisions based on bias, will be a good way of starting the change.
Great, thank you. Melanie, go ahead.
I definitely echo what Simone said. I think this type of cultural change in an industry, in an organization, has to come from the top, and the leaders have to believe that there's a problem and want to make it change. So it's really making a commitment, making yourself uncomfortable and sometimes a little vulnerable. It's hard to do, but I think that's where we're really going to start to see real change happening. A lot of the efforts around diversity and inclusion have been very grassroots. It's kind of come from the collective, and I think until leadership sort of takes the initiative to make that change happen and require it to change within your organization, it's not going to happen.
Good, great answers. All right, I open for questions from the floor. I see hands going up everywhere. Oh no, those are just the microphones. Yes, please. Can you first say who you are and where you work?
I'm Natasha Devasa from Taylor & Francis.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to carry on from what the question you asked and the speakers. So wherever I go and attend anything which is on diversity, and that's happening more often, which is a good thing, it's always a woman-dominated panel. And if there's a man, he's usually in the lead, just like you are here, Michiel. So if I had something to change, I would say that we need much more. And usually the audience is also more women. In this case, of course, you have a captive audience, so that isn't the case probably. So, you know, what I'd like to see change is that we have many more men on that panel, because, you know, unless everybody acknowledges, as Simone was saying, consciously about an unconscious or conscious bias, we're not going to, it's going to take longer than 8 years. Honestly, I think 8 years is a very optimistic estimate. It's happening collectively, certainly, but So I'm just wondering how we can change that. If you were in India, it would be, all women. Just this panel out of all other panels, and you were there for the IPA, that.
I was.
Yeah. So there was a panel on leadership in publishing, and there wasn't a single woman on that panel. So I'm just wondering how we can.
That was embarrassing. I acknowledge it.
For all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how we can bring that change and lead from the front.
Michiel, can I answer her question real quick?
Yes, please go ahead.
The panel,
Yes.
we wanted to bring forth folks who have been actively in the industry for the last 12 months who are actually doing some great things and bring forth information. But we certainly hear you, because we do want to make sure that we get a balanced point of view. And I'm sure we'll build on this for next year. Thank you for your comment. Well, sometimes, some folks have to take the lead, right? Okay. We have a question over here. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, I think, still just, I'm Rachel Jacobs from Springer Nature. One of the things I wanted to pick up is a point that you've just made then in terms of the panel discussions and hearing from people in the industry that are doing great things, and I am really pleased to see so many of the great initiatives that we've talked about this morning. But I've got to be honest, in comparison to other industries, I feel we're behind. We're still at a point of educating. We're still at a point of referring to the McKinsey report of why this is important. And I believe all of those things. By the way, I also just believe it's fundamentally the right thing, and it's a good thing. So we're still explaining to each other why it's important, and we're still sharing data to reinforce why it's important, all of which are brilliant. But in comparison to some other industries, we've got a long way to go. So what I'd like to understand is how, as an association and as how a leadership group, we can help facilitate getting to really understand proven strategies that have worked, rather than just examples of the good stuff we're all doing. And how can we learn and bring expertise in from outside? Yes, we should look at what we are doing, but I actually also think we should be out there beyond our own industry and bringing expertise in where people are honestly, and let's all be honest with ourselves, further up the curve than we are, and see if we can leapfrog to that next stage rather than crawl our way in the next few years.
So, Michiel, if I may, this afternoon we have our CEO panel, and we do have 3 white males on the panel and 2 women executives, where we can certainly ask those questions.
Is there an industry you find particularly inspiring?
Not as much as I would like to. But I think there are a lot of other industries where we've seen the progression of women up through the ranks. We don't have a problem recruiting women into the industry. I think there's a much wider problem out there, as Jess was illustrating. But actually, if you look at most of our organisations, ours included, 60% of the women are in Springer Nature. It's bringing those through. So I mean, there's an enormous amount that we could focus on, but one of the things that I would really like to learn from other industries is where we've seen industries succeed in really bringing that pipeline through into that executive level and really focus on those, because honestly, I think that's one of our biggest, it's not our only challenge, but it is one of our biggest challenges.
Please go ahead.
And I think what you're talking about in terms of how do we advance this more quickly is really one of the objectives of the coalition. Is can we provide those best practices? Can we provide data? Can we provide resources and information so that organizations don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel and start from the beginning, that we can look at other industries and be able to bring those resources easily, quickly to the market, and do it in a way that allows everyone to sort of benefit from that collectively. So again, even that coalition is going to take time, and we recognize that, but cultural change, no matter what industry, what type of culture you're trying to change, it's not always the fastest process, and it's not an excuse. Something we would all like to accelerate that, I think, but we also have to recognize changing people's attitudes and their opinions and their biases is not going to happen, as quickly as we might hope.
I see a question all the way in the back.
Hi, from all the way in the back, Eva Wille, Weil VCH. An observation I am making, at least with our company in Germany, that we have a very high percentage of part-time women in our publishing house. And I think this is something we all should have a closer look at to support women working part-time to make their careers. Thanks.
Very good point. In my country, in the Netherlands, it's, I think, the rule that women work part-time. It's a whole other discussion whether that's good or not, but it's certainly completely incorporated there.
I think it's something that they see as well within universities, that universities that have really good procedures for women and men taking shared parental leave, and nurseries on campuses and childcare vouchers and all of that are actually much more productive, kind of coming back to this McKinsey report, and they do a much better job at retaining diverse people within their workforce. So certainly I'd look at some of the university best practice on part-time work, flexible working, and also childcare, because some of them are doing really, really well.
It's an interesting discussion whether it would affect career possibilities. I see again a question at the very last row.
Hi, Nico Gonchroff, Digital Science. Having been
Hi.
involved in a few of these cross-publisher, cross-stakeholder initiatives, I love what the coalition is doing. I haven't done my proper homework on it. The trick is getting people to spend the time and commit to a measurable outcome. And something, I mean, maybe you've already thought about this, and if you have, my apologies, but something where you pick an event where people report on their progress and you have a report. I don't know exactly how you measure the different objectives, but holding people to some type of progress and benchmark with the threat of some type of public presentation of the results once a year might advance things at the pace that Rachel was speaking about and that you're trying to achieve. It's just, I guess I'm taking a bit of a software development approach to the problem. I don't know if that's appropriate, but just an idea.
Great, thank you.
I think that's definitely a great idea. I'd like to think of it as more of an incentive than a threat. But we do, I know at our annual meeting, SSP's annual meeting, you're definitely seeing more threads of diversity, what people are doing. Hopefully seeing that through not only sessions about diversity, what people are doing, case studies, showing that this isn't as hard as it might seem, and giving folks actionable things that they can do and carry out within their own organizations as well. I think definitely helps accelerate that if they see, publisher X is doing this, so we could probably do this within our organization as well. So I think those are great. I mean, I think the other aspect of that is organizations like SSP and STM have the ability to put some things in place ourselves in terms of advancing diversity by how we establish the panels. I mean, we talked about sort of the all-male panel thing earlier, and one of the things our program committee was asking about in terms of this year's upcoming annual meeting is, should we have a diversity track? To which my response was, I think we should have some sessions on diversity, but I think our contribution to improving diversity and inclusion needs to be how we assemble those panels, that it needs to have diversity of race and ethnicity and gender and all of those things in there. And then that's where our focus needs to be in terms of making that happen and providing those leadership opportunities and those speaking opportunities for those that are underrepresented in our industry.
Anyone in UK academia would have done anything if it wasn't for the Athena Swan and the Juno Awards. So I really think having to publish their data, having to put it forward, and having it linked to funding made people actually motivated to change stuff, because otherwise everyone was just doing kind of lip service diversity initiatives and not actually changing anything structurally. So I definitely think that linking it to money in an awards thing made an impact.
And I think in the UK, the gender pay gap data, I mean, it's pretty hard data for our companies out there. So I think a wake-up call for some of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panel a round of applause. However, However, I did see a hand go up at the last minute. My good friend Heather Staines, who I must give her the opportunity. Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Staines from Hypothesis, and just earlier this year we hired some additional engineers, making our engineering team predominantly female engineering team, which I think is unusual. One of the things that I like to mention, and I think I've mentioned it here before, is the possibility for remote working. Publishing is an industry that's concentrated in a number of places, and if you're not in one of those places, your opportunities might be limited. It's heartening to see so many publishers embracing the idea that as a global industry, we can work from where we are. So it's worth, I think, repeating again that there should be more flexibility when you're looking for new employees, when you're looking to promote, when you're looking to hire from outside, and consider remote work as a possibility. Thank you.
Can we have a quick reply by the panel? Their thoughts about remote working?
Yes, that was something that came through when we did the survey too. Quite a few people liked the option of telecommuting, and I think increasingly publishers are embracing the option. There are a few companies out. Hypothesis is one. I think Orchid is another, where very many people just work remotely as a culture, and they are finding that they do get a great deal of productivity out of their workforce by embracing those options. It widens the recruiting options for companies sometimes, and it works.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give this panel a great round of applause. Thank you.